Welcome to the Hourly Podcast. In today's episode, TJ Schier, CEO and founder of Smart Restaurant Group, shares insights on motivating frontline employees and building a culture built around guest service. But he also emphasizes the importance of aligning employee culture with the guest culture and using incentives to drive higher performance. Schier then discusses the challenges faced by managers in today's environment, including hiring and adapting to the shift towards digital and off-premise dining. Enjoy.
This episode is brought to you by JoJo, an AI virtual recruiter powered by Sprockets. Designed for the hourly workforce, JoJo works 24/7 to source, screen, and schedule interviews with the best applicants for your business. JoJo helps reduce employee turnover and time spent hiring so you and your team can focus on other important tasks. To learn more, head to sprockets.ai/JoJo.
DJ, good to see you, man. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Good. So for people that don't know you or follow you on LinkedIn, give us a little bit of background.
Well, as you can tell, I've been around a while. I'm basically 18 years at Chuck E. Cheese, manager, field support, corporate office there. Went out on my own for 20 years and did hospitality consulting and speaking. And a big chunk of that time, I was a multi-unit franchisee for Which Sandwiches. And then I joined Big Shots Golf for a couple of years, helped that brand grow from 1 to 7 before it was sold. And now back in the consulting space. So it's been a long, fun, crazy, winding road.
Love it. What do you mean by consulting? Like, what is your expertise? Is it operations? Is it food cost? Like, what's your niche?
When I left Chuck E. Cheese, it was because I wrote a book called Send Flowers to the Living, which was about how to motivate frontline employees. And so I really started there, but it kind of leveled up one level from there. And it was how to really build a guest service culture, but do it through your employees so that your employee culture was as good or better than your guest culture. And so I really, in the consulting space, build a lot of training and operational programs for companies to teach them how to grow internally, tie it to their guest service culture, and kind of get them going in the same direction.
Yeah. And like at the Hourly Podcast, like we're obsessed with that topic. So give us some like high level thoughts, lessons that you share in that book and kind of in your teachings.
Well, the book's a little dated because it talked about using Blockbuster gift cards for incentives. So, it's probably a little bit outdated.
What's Blockbuster?
Yeah, exactly. It's the company that should have owned Netflix that is probably more famous for not buying Netflix than anything else. But, I always tell people when I was 16 and went to work at Chuck E. Cheese, my dad was telling me how entitled I was and how hard he had it and how this generation doesn't have a work ethic. And, you fast forward 40 something years and we all say the same thing about this generation. And, I think what managers need to do is really get the employees to understand you may not be here for a career, but you're here for something bigger. And so if the managers can really kind of tell the why and kind of paint the picture for the team, they'll at least get excited for the time they're here. And at that point, then they need to put their money where their mouth is. And so I'm a real big believer in reward recognition and incentives that align what the employee wants with what the business wants. And too often those things are counterintuitive. I got to cut labor. That's great for the business, short term, terrible for the employee in a lot of cases. And so you got to really align those things. But ultimately, incentives are just a tool to teach a manager how to get higher performance out of a person. But ultimately, the manager has to be living and treating the employees the right way versus, using the incentives and then behaving a different way.
Yeah, super interesting, and I agree 100%. Talk to me a little bit more about like motivating and educating of something bigger, right? So we have a lot of general managers that listen to the podcast, director of operations,
Yep.
MUFOs, multiple unit franchise owners, and tactically, what does that look like? And maybe an example of a company where you did that really effectively.
I think tactically it's simply getting the employees to understand why the business owner is doing what they're doing. And what I mean by that as an example is most employees probably think a restaurant makes a ton of money. And many franchisees are afraid to share their P&L with the staff because, oh, they don't understand the whole picture. And they're both right. But
Right.
I would argue, as an example, when I was a franchisee at Which, we had stores that made money, we had stores that lost money. Collectively, we grew the business. We would share that with our managers, and we wanted them to share that with the employees, and even like in a good location. And this is why I would urge managers to share and be open book, but you have to do it the right way. If an employee sees a P&L where this sandwich shop made $75,000 in a year, the employee is going, wow, that's a lot of money. They own in multiple locations. We had to take that a step further and say, hey, we spent $350,000. This was a long time ago. It didn't cost that much. It costs a lot more than that now. But we spent $350,000 to build this location. So now put yourself in our shoes. I had $350,000. Now I have zero. I get 75 this year. I get 75 next year. How long does it take me just to get back to where I started originally?
Right.
And so we tried to get them to understand how their little part played a role in the big picture of what we were trying to do. And when they understood we cared about them, and they understood that we're just not there on on the lake house boat every weekend spending all this money they think we're making, they tended to really understand, hey, this person does have my interest at heart. They're hardworking. They invest a lot of money in this. And so we really kind of got them to understand what we were trying to accomplish and how they fit into it.
Yeah. And again, like tactically, is that you sit down at the first day, you walk them through that? Is it regularly just giving everybody updates like, hey, sales are up this week, sales are down this week? Like, how much are you sharing and what cadence?
We, with the general managers, we had what we call the RIP, Rapid Improvement Program, and we would go through sales, labor, service, safety, so some of those kind of things weekly with them. And then our turnaround to the manager was like, look, your location's up or down, labor's too high, great, turnover's too high or low. Create a rapid improvement program right now to get everybody focused on that. Our P&L's print. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was going to say our P&Ls print monthly, so we would then want the GMs to share those with the team members. But one of the things that we did at orientation, and I can't remember who did this. I learned this trick 100 years ago, but we had a slide in our orientation deck that had a dollar bill. So the employee's first day was like, okay, out of every sales dollar that we make, how much profit do you think we make? And they always say some number like 90%. And we had a kind of build on the slide. All right, 30% cost of goods sold, 20% labor, rent, credit cards, etc. And they could see kind of how much was left at the end of the day. It just helped them understand where we were coming from, that we're not just minting money here. And it aligned it. And I'll give you another example along those lines. When I was at Which, it was a tough sandwich industry's tough.
Yeah.
And we really saw a opportunity to go after catering, and specifically with schools, like feeding football teams and bands and some of those kind of things. And the people hated doing it. It was, kind of a distraction. This is, 10 years ago, before kind of catering blew up like it has today. And we went out to everybody and said, look, you will get 10% of any catering order that you go get us. Yeah. And so then all of a sudden I have employees calling the schools for me, trying to get the football coach to order, paying attention to a guest that's got a lanyard on with a company logo that they can now talk to get a catering order. And I'm writing checks for $500. These employees are getting $5,000 catering orders for us. It flipped the script with how they felt about catering, because now all of a sudden they've got some cash rolling in. And this is how I would urge any manager when the staff comes to them and says, we need more hours. Okay, great. I want to give you more hours. Let's work together to solve this problem. I need more sales. That equals more hours. And that's how this kind of works cohesively so that we can row the same direction and get this to happen.
Yeah. And how much, I mean, it's a difficult question to answer, but I'll ask it anyways. Like, how much does that pay money play into the retention and happiness of the workforce, in your opinion?
It's different for everybody. I always say the most effective incentive is the one that employee wants. I don't drink coffee. A Starbucks card's not going to do me any good. Right. If I learned this lesson we were doing a thing when I actually worked at Chuck E. Cheese, and this was technically last century, but we were doing like Best Buy gift cards and gas cards and some of those kind of things. And we were doing some stuff for the cooks, and one of the managers said to me, "Look, my employees are sending cash back to their family in Mexico. They need cash. Great. You know what? Let's make the incentive cash." So, cash unfortunately can't overcome a bad general manager or a bad manager. If people get treated poorly and the schedules aren't up on time, and kind of the psychological needs of the staff aren't being taken care of first, cash can't overcome that. But people like to have control over what they get to do with their money. And instead of me dictating what the incentive is, let them pick.
Yeah. And is that, you check in and you start to identify kind of what they like and then make guesses off of it? Or is it like, hey, here's a sheet of all the things you could have, put X's next to the things that you love?
We kind of took this one further.
Okay.
And I'll share with, so our company was called Smart Restaurant Group, and it was just an acronym for our investors' names. But we created what was called a Smart Card, and our managers would give those cards out, and it was just like collecting tickets at Chuck E. Cheese. The cards are worth $0.25 at the time. You save up. You know what? Tell us what you want. We'll get it for you. So if they saved up 100 cards, they got $25. They came to us and said, "I want a Target gift card, or I want a gas card, or I want cash." Fine. You guys save it up. You tell us what you want when you want it. Nowadays, it's kind of evolved, and we use a company called Bonusly when I was at Big Shots Golf, and it was awesome because it basically automated that whole process.
Yeah.
We could reward them with points. They have a bank account with points. They could pick the gift card or the donation to charity that they wanted, and I just got a bill for whatever it was that they redeemed, and it worked awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, shifting gears to your current work, doing consulting, one thing, you joked about like having the gray hair. You've been through a lot of employment cycles, economic cycles, and like that's really interesting. And now that you're consulting and working with companies actively, like what are you hearing being like the most pressing problems right now in today's environment?
The most pressing thing I hear is people say they have a hiring problem, and they're right. And then I see other people that say they don't have a hiring problem, and they're right. And what I try and get people to understand today is you have a reputation as an employer in your market. And just like trying to market your restaurant, you have to be out there marketing as an employer and being real disciplined about what you're doing in regards to what your reputation is as an employer. And the ones that I see that just have the ratty signs up that have been up for 5 years that say now hiring now, please $15 an hour or whatever, what is that saying to a potential employer? And the real smart companies have a social media presence. They're posting things, letting their employees post things to make it look like a cool place to work. And they do, kind of almost influencer marketing to a degree about what it's like to work there. And I think some of those kind of things are really missed by managers or franchisees because, they're so stuck nose down in the business. They can't see what is it like to work for me, or how do I get people to even come here because everybody else is trying to, fish in the same pond that I am. And I think today leaders need to put some effort into their recruitment advertising and the brand that they have out there. Chipotle, Cane's, Panera do phenomenal jobs with their recruiting. You can knock that stuff off. I get it. You're not Chipotle, although Chipotle's looking for they got a big opening right now too.
Right.
But you can knock off what they do, and you have videos on your website about employees that are working there, about what it's like to work there and how fun it is, and let the peer group tell the message, not the old guy on the porch.
Yeah, totally get it. No, and so like hiring, what else? Is it, food costs going up? Is it not as much demand as there used to be? Like what's number two?
Well, I think it's a shift of what's happened over the last few years because of COVID. And now everybody's saying it's inflation right now. You walk in and Chipotle's more expensive, Chick-fil-A's more expensive, et cetera, et cetera. But the companies that have this all figured out are not complaining about it. Texas Roadhouse doesn't complain about inflation. The ones that are going bankrupt do. Texas Roadhouse has got a great reputation as an employer, and they do a phenomenal job, and they have a great reputation as a brand. I think the challenges have become for managers is our business shifted so far digital off-premise catering from what it was 3 or 4 years ago. We've had to learn a whole new skill set and maybe even redesign our restaurants. And so many of the consumers are not eating in our restaurants anymore. They're getting it to go. They're digital orders, third-party delivery. It's created a new business, and a lot of us got lazy in regards to customer service because everything was to go for a while. And you got people coming back in, and we may not have people that are interacting properly with our guests like we want them to. So we may need to polish the team that we have in there and bring back the old guest service 101 training.
Yeah, love it. Well, we are coming up on time. I feel like, especially after today, we could definitely do part 1, part 2, part 3. So we're going to have to put a pin in that, do it later. But
sure.
I ask every single person on the podcast the same question as their last question. And that's, what was your first hourly job? And were you fired or did you leave that job?
My first hourly job was as a game attendant in 1982 at Chuck E. Cheese. And ironically, the first question was, can you close tonight? Which I wouldn't highly recommend, but I did last there for 18 years, so it must have been an effective question.
Love it. And so, game attendee, what does that mean? Like, you stand by the claw machine and hope a kid doesn't run in there?
Well, long before you were born, a game room at Chuck E. Cheese had about 100 video games in there. It was Pac-Man, Asteroids, and all that kind of stuff. And skee-ball, that was pretty much it. There wasn't a lot of ticket redemption and those kind of things. So we were literally unjamming token machines kind of nonstop is what we were doing.
So do you have like the special touch where like you could go to any machine now and like give it a special like hit and quarters fall out, or like, vending machine, all that stuff?
Well, that segment's kind of gone far beyond tokens now. It's all card driven or RFID driven. So my skill set is not valued in that arena anymore.
Got it. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the podcast, and
appreciate it.
Look forward to staying in touch.
All right. Talk to you soon. Good luck, everybody.
Yeah.